Welcome to the Dice Tower, a series of videos about games and the people who played them. And now, here are your hosts, Tom and Holly Vasel.
Welcome to the Dice Tower!
Yes, welcome to the Dice Tower. I'm Tom Vasel, and this is Holly. And today, on the Dice Tower videocast, we're going to be talking about kids' games again. I am a big fan of kids' games, as I have many children of my own, and I like to see what kind of games they enjoy. Today we'll be talking about a category that kids are usually about just as good at as adults, and that's dexterity. Now, there's hundreds of dexterity games, and I'm just going to show you 4 today. Why you probably will say, well, why didn't he show this one or that one? Well, probably in the future we may show some that you've played before, but these are some that you might not have heard of, and so let's get right to them. The first one is called Pillage and Plunder. It uses a Viking ship, or a wooden Viking ship, with these little people on the back, and you can place these people in different holes on the ship to make each game different. And then it comes with a pile of different sized goods, rounded goods, and then a wooden die. And on your turn, you roll this die, and it tells you which piece to put on the ship, and the ship will then tilt, and you're basically trying not to make the ship tilt over. Watch. Now, Pillage and Plunder is a game that actually works well really with adults, or with adults and with kids. And it's really a difficult game. To get all the pieces on is almost impossible, even if you sit there and you try, because you're not allowed to hold it with one hand and balance it while you're putting the pieces on. But, and just to get all the pieces on is a really tough challenge and a lot of fun. I cannot do it really by myself, and if it ever is done, it would be so precarious that the slightest motion would knock it over. Keeps it fun, and it's really nice wooden components. So, high marks for Pillage and Plunder. Another game that's fun, and this one is much more oriented towards kids, is Zimbbos. Zimbbos is a box that's full of lots of little elephants, and you're trying to stack these elephants on top of each other and on top of different balance beams. Check this one out. Zimbbos is a very simple game. The idea of stacking the different elephants or the clowns or whatever, they all can be stacked easily on top of each other. These bars can be stacked upside down, the animals upside down. It lets you stack 3, then 2, then 1. I mean, there's different ways to stack it. And the die tells you what you're putting on. A star means you put on an animal or one of these bars. If you roll dots, you simply put on the elephants, and you put them on in numerical order. And it's almost like a cooperative game. Everyone's trying to put the tower together in a sense. And it's fun. It's not that difficult, especially for adults. As I say that, it falls. But for kids, it's a real blast with some really colorful, tremendously good wooden pieces. A game very similar along these lines is made by Haba. And this is an animal upon animal game. And it has the same kind of feel, but in this one, the animals, unlike these elephants, which are specifically made to be put together, these animals are made so that putting them together is a real chore. And watch how this one goes together. Animal upon animal is much more difficult because of the odd shapes of the different creatures. If you look, the monkey is shaped in a certain way. The sheep is this big, bulky thing. The snake is easier. The toucan has an odd shape also. And really, that works well for the game. When you're rolling dice in this game, it tells you how many pieces you put on. Occasionally, you'll roll the alligator, who is always the first piece that's put on. And then you put a piece next to the alligator, which spreads the base out a bit. Sometimes you'll get a hand, which lets you give a piece to another player and they have to put it on. Or sometimes you get a question mark and everybody else decides which of your pieces gets put on. And that's what makes this game unique, is that each player has their own set of pieces, and you are trying to get all those pieces onto the whole shebang. Once all your pieces are gone, you win. So it's not necessarily knocking it over that causes the end of the game. When you saw there that was knocked over, the pieces that were knocked over, Holly would have gotten those and we would have continued on. So you don't want to knock it over because it gives you extra pieces. But all in all, it's a very fun game, although it's much more challenging than the first two that I showed you. Pillage and Plunder is actually probably even more challenging, but at the beginning it's really easy to put those round things on. At the end there, you're trying to gauge the balance. The last dexterity game that I want to talk about here is a very unusual one, and that's because you're not stacking wooden things. Most of the time you're stacking wooden things, occasionally plastic, but here you're stacking these basically tiny mattresses, tiny blankets, and tiny pillows together. This is a game that's based on the classic story, The Princess and the Pea. And at the very beginning of the game, you are taking this little round pea and putting it in her bed, and then the princess you have to pile it up and get the princess to sleep on the top of the bed. Now, it's a lot harder than it sounds, and this is another cooperative game in which players were all working together to get this bed as high as possible. Very entertaining. Check it out. The game is more than what you just saw. You just saw me stacking all the mattresses on top of each other, but rather the princess piece is placed on this board, and each turn the player rolls a die to see how many spaces she moves around the board, and then the space simply tells you whether you will add something or whether you will take something off. And there is twice as many add than taking off, but the game actually goes on pretty long. You're getting there, and all of a sudden two people make you take two pieces off and put them back on. And stacking these pillows and these mattresses and these blankets is actually quite easy, but when that pea is down there, you would be surprised at how much that imbalances the whole thing. And it's actually quite difficult to get that stacked. So if you have hard kids, you can kind of stick that pea in a corner if the kids are having a hard time with it, but if you really want to give them a challenge, stick it right in the middle of the bed. The theme works really well. I mean, I always thought that the Princess and the Pea was kind of a stupid story, because how could you feel a pea? But if the pea was this gigantic, I think I would feel it. And it really works well with the kids. So there you go, 4 dexterity games. These are games that you can play with kids. You're pretty much both on equal footing, especially once they reach the age of 5 or 6. They're right there on you. And again, you can kind of tailor it. You got games like Zimbbos, where the pieces are really easy to stack and fit right on top of each other, to Animals, where the pieces, it's a much more competitive game, and you know, you're trying to get rid of your pieces, to a cooperative game with very unusual pieces, to something that even if you don't have kids, this will work well in many situations as you're just trying to stack things. I have this game sitting on the shelf, and it's kind of a conversation starter. What is that? Well, it's just a quick game, and all these games take 10 minutes or less to play, and you can play them multiple times. You'll find that kids will want their friends to play them, and they look amazing, and they're a lot of fun. They don't maybe teach a lot of strategy other than dexterity, but that's a good skill for kids to develop, and everything seems to fit together pretty well. So, all 4 of these games I'd recommend. You can take a look and see which one maybe fits your bill the best, but hey, I'm not getting rid of any of them because I think they're all great. Anyway, until next time, I'm Tom Vasel, and this is my beautiful but yet slightly distracted co-host, Holly. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Say bye.
Thanks for joining us today. For more written, audio, and video reviews, as well as the #1 board game podcast, check out the website at www.thedicetower.com. Until then, this is Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.